Hi, my name is Celine and I work at the MUHC libraries as a librarian, and this presentation today will be going over Medline essentials. So to start with, we'll be talking about the principles of searching medical databases. A medical database is produced by companies or government organizations. It indexes medical journals and provides references and abstracts to journal articles. Usually they require paid subscription to access, and they are ultimately used for research. Sometimes databases are thought of as though they were virtual libraries or collections of journals, but in reality, they're more like a card catalog. It helps you find articles, but accessing the full text is a bonus. So within the database, you'll only be able to find the titles, abstracts, references, and then other information about the articles. But to get a full text, you'll have to go outside the database. So Medline is a medical database that is produced by the US National Library of Medicine. It indexes over 5,500 journals in the health sciences and provides references and abstracts to journal articles. It is also available via the Ovid interface or via PubMed. Ovid is usually a paid subscription, and PubMed is accessible to everyone. To access Medline via Ovid, you just need to go to muhclibraries.ca, and there will be a link on the right-hand corner of the screen to access Medline either via your MUHC access or your McGill access if you have a McGill email. So to start off with the principles of online searching, the first idea is to define your question, your research question, and break it down into its separate concepts. So here are some research questions. We'll be going through them to determine what the key concepts in each one are. So for the first one, does breastfeeding reduce pain in neonates? The first concept would be breastfeeding. The second concept would be pain, and the third would be neonates. So neonates are the population that we're looking at. For the second example, can pelvic muscle exercises improve quality of life in women with urinary incontinence? Pelvic muscle exercises are the first concept. Quality of life is the second, and women with urinary incontinence is the population we're looking at. And finally, are cardiovascular diseases impacted by the use of electronic cigarettes? Cardiovascular diseases is the first concept, and electronic cigarettes the next one. So we're going to be working with this clinical question today as our example. So we'll be looking at whether cardiovascular diseases are impacted by the use of electronic cigarettes. And we'll be searching these concepts within Medline, and we'll be using mesh headings to search for them. I'll explain mesh headings in further detail in the next presentation, but to start, we'll just be going through this example in Medline. So there's just a couple things to go over before we go into Medline. So before we get into the example, I'll go over some tips and tricks we have to keep things organized. So to start, we can open a word processing document and create headings for each new concept, and then brainstorm and take notes one at a time under each concept to determine which mesh headings we'll be using and which keywords we'll be using. So for the example that we're looking at, I'll go over how to identify appropriate mesh terms in Medline. Once we search for a mesh term, we'll have the option to explode and to focus the term. Exploding means that we'll be including more specific aspects of our topic. So for example, within cardiovascular diseases, there are many different kinds of cardiovascular diseases. And if we explode our search, we'll be searching for all of those different kinds within the heading of cardiovascular diseases. So for example, it will include stroke as well as heart attacks or aneurysms, etc. So exploding a search will broaden your search. If you just search for cardiovascular diseases, you will get around 139,000 results, whereas if you explode it, you'll get over 2,292,000 results. So when focusing a search, you're limiting the search results to articles where the subject heading is a major point in the article. And this will narrow down the number of results. So for example, with cardiovascular diseases, if you don't focus it, you'll have 139,000 results approximately. But if you do focus the search, you'll end up with 97,000 results. So that's a lot less. I'll go into Medline now to provide this example. We'll look up cardiovascular diseases. And when you search something in the search box on Medline, it will automatically map the search to a subject heading. So for example, this one already mapped it to cardiovascular diseases. If you want to see the full mesh tree, you can click the subject and then it'll show you the other categories that are within it. If you want to explode it, you just have to check off that box and then focus it, do the same thing. Here is a list of all of the subheadings that can narrow down your search. We're not going to be using any of them today, but if you want to, for example, only look at diagnostic imaging or diagnosis or drug therapy for certain topics, you can narrow your search down. Now, the search history is always at the bottom of the screen on Medline. I'll look up electronic cigarettes now. So this mapped onto the subject heading, electronic nicotine delivery systems. Now, there are no narrower subject headings within this, so I'm not going to explode because it won't make a difference, but I will focus the search. So now we've searched for both of our concepts. Now we'll be going over how to combine searches using and or. So using or can combine related terms for an individual concept, and this will increase your number of search results. So for example, cardiovascular diseases and heart disease are two concepts that are referring to the same thing. So within the search, we'll combine them with the word or. So it'll be cardiovascular diseases or heart disease. When using and, we'll be combining two or more concepts together to find relevant articles that are referring to both concepts. And this will decrease your number of search results. So for example, we'll be combining electronic cigarettes and cardiovascular diseases together to find articles that mention both. I'll show you how to do this in Medline. So from the search history section, we just have to check off the searches that we'll be using and then combine them with and. And now, as you can see, we have 144 results. So we'll do a really quick exercise right now to get used to choosing whether or not we should combine searches with and or. So for the first one, for myocardial infarction and or heart attack, since these are two terms for the same thing, we'll be using or to combine them. For childhood cancer and or gastrointestinal complications, we'll be using and because they're two different concepts. For patient education and or diabetes, we'll use and again. And then for chickenpox and or varicella, we'll use or because both chickenpox and varicella are referring to the same concept. Finally, we're going to apply limits. So limits can refer to the language, the year, the age group, or the publication type, etc. And these will narrow your search down to try to find more specific relevant results. So for our research question, we're going to limit our search to review articles that are published in English or French from 2015 until the current year. So to add limits, we just need to go to the limits section up here and go to additional limits. For the publication year, I'll start with 2015 to the current year. For publication types, we'll go to review articles. And then for the languages, we'll pick English and French. And then we'll limit the search. So now we have 40 results. And you can see the results underneath your search history. So the final principle of online searching is to evaluate your results and modify your search strategy if necessary. So the final step in evaluating your results, remember to keep it real. Are the articles relevant to your topic? Are you getting the expected number of results? Are there any additional terms that you'd like to use or any additional limits that you'd like to add? Adding additional terms would likely increase your number of results if you're adding other terms that are relevant to one of your search concepts, whereas adding limits will narrow down your set of results. So that's it for this portion of the presentation. In the next section, I'll be going over mesh headings in more detail.